Hello to anyone watching. My name is Benjamin Sheely, and I'm about to present my final capstone for our full stack developer bootcamp here at Savvy Coders. To give you a little bit of my background and my past experience, I formerly served in the Marines as a plane captain and crew chief instructor on C-130s. While in the military, I completed my bachelor's degree in business, and after leaving, I have also received my master's degree in finance. Since leaving the military, I've worked the majority of my non-military career in retail finance, and I currently hold a Series 7, 63, 3, and soon to be a 34. Besides that, I also have a very strong passion for web development, and eventually I hope to combine these skills and work as a developer in the fintech industry. Now, in regards to my project, or the final capstone here at Savvy Coders, I decided to go in a direction that would just make my wife's life a little bit easier. She's actually a small business owner and runs a small pet store here in Texas, selling a mix of pet supplies and the actual animals themselves. Now, all the animals that she does sell, she actually breeds them all herself to ensure that the most healthy animals possible are bred and just to ensure overall ethical breeding practices. Now, one tool that is absolutely necessary for her and really for all breeders is a way to manage an animal's lineage or pedigree to ensure that as little inbreeding as possible is occurring. Now, most breeders these days rely on just a really large binder with hundreds or even thousands of animal pedigrees, making it incredibly difficult to track and manage their records. Now, in order to fix that and overall just make her life a little bit easier, I decided to spend my time developing a tool to manage her animals and eventually to quickly find potential pairings. Now, before we actually jump into the code and take a look at my actual app that I built, let's go ahead and open up my designs right here and take a look at what my end goal was. So looking here at the first image, you can see I built out a dashboard, which reflects a pretty standard design for a web application. You can see that over here on the left-hand side, I've got my sidebar, which contains all the different tabs or tools a user can navigate to. At the top here, I also have a nav bar with a little search box where users can search the actual animal they want to pull up. A little toggle here on the right where you can filter the entire tool or the entire application by the breed of the animal. And then finally, just to the right of that, I've got a little toggle to flip between light mode and dark mode to just allow at least a little bit of platform customization. And overall, the intention was to just leave this overall dashboard page basically completely blank until animals were actually added to the database. So currently, this is what I would expect to see if there were no animals. It would just have a big button in the center that says add your first animal. And then once animals were loaded, once we actually had data to present, this is what we would expect to see right here, an actual list of helpful tools and things that breeders would want to keep track of. So right here, we could see just a list of all of the user's animals. We could see a list of maybe some current pairings that they've paired up and need to be mindful of. And then over here would be maybe just some recent litters. Again, just to keep track of what animals were just born, what animals do you have paired together, and then what animals do you even own. Now, besides this dashboard page, if we go down to my next tool right here, the animals page would really just be something similar to what we saw on the dashboard, a list of all of the animals that the user owns, or in this case, my wife owns, as well as a button to add new animals, and then maybe a way to filter through that list or search in some way. This actually continues over to the pairings tab, and this one would eventually be a tool to view all of the animals that are a good match for one another. So to ensure as little genetic crossover as possible, and again, hopefully produce the healthiest animals possible. Now, finally, the very last page in here would be the pet profile page, and arguably the most important page in the application. This page is meant to give her an in-depth look at one specific animal. So displaying that animal's key information, like the animal's age or gender or color, or just other basic tracking metrics, while also showing the past litters of this animal, the past pairings of that animal, and then probably one of the more difficult things to make was a pedigree or family tree for that animal. Now, just keeping the goal in mind, it was to set out to create a minimum viable product. So I wasn't going to be able to add all of these things that I wanted. There just wasn't enough time to create absolutely everything. But let me flip over and go over what I did have time to make. Now, opening up my application, you can see I am currently on the dashboard page. And at the moment, you can see that all I have right now on the dashboard is that familiar Add Animal button. You can also see the similar setup with the sidebar again here on the left. We got the nav bar up here on the top. And we also have right now an actual functional light and dark mode toggle. So if I go ahead and click on that, you can see I flip to dark mode, click on it again, flips back over to light mode. Now, in order to create this toggle, it required me to attach an event listener to the theme button. As you can see right here, I named it in my code, which then listened for a click event to toggle the class of my CSS to dark mode. If we go ahead and pull up my style sheet right here and take a look at that CSS, you can essentially see that flipping over that class list essentially changed those custom variables that I created right here, focusing on the background, the card, as well as the text. So again, just clicking that toggle, flipped over my custom variables right here, and allowed me to very quickly flip back and forth between light and dark mode. Heading over here to the animals page next, you can see here a large table displaying a list of all of the animals currently stored within my database on MongoDB. Currently, we can see here it displays the animal's name, things like its eye color, its father, its mother, its date of birth, and various other things that are just important for her to keep track of. And here in just a minute, I will be showing you the form that's going to be used to actually add this information to the database. But the data displayed here on the table is actually fetched whenever this animal view is loaded. So if we actually pull up my code again, and we take a look at the index.js file, if we look down here, you can see that if the view matches the name animals, and again, that's just the parameter in the URL, we can see it makes an Axios GET request to my Hedgehog API URL, which is essentially my server, and that server is currently being hosted on Render. And right now I've got the endpoint Hedgehog set up. So if it makes a ping to that endpoint, it's going to respond with a list of all of the hedgehogs in that database. It's then going to take that data and actually store it in my store file, because this is how I'm going to essentially keep track of things, keep state, so it ensures that I don't have to make that request constantly, and it stores that data in my application right here at store.animals.hedgehogs. And then what it's going to do is it's going to take that data, and on my animals page, it's going to take that data, essentially pass through by the state object right here, and then I can iterate over it with the map method and populate all that data row by row. So in order for us to do that, we could either hit the Add Animal button on the dashboard, or we could just come up here to the upper right-hand corner and again, just select Add Animal here. This right here will then open up a form where the user could type in the animal's name, the animal's sex, color, eye color, everything it would need. And there is some basic form validation on the client side here. So if we were to open back up the code, and again, take a look at my form here, you can see some basic validation, some simple stuff like certain inputs being required, but as well as I believe there are some pre-made options in here that users can use. And I believe I added some patterns, but I believe that is under my models. So you can see once it reaches my server, essentially, it is going to go through some basic server-side validation. If we were to look at the name, it's going to ensure that first off, it is a string that's being passed to it. It is required, even though that is on the client side as well. And then it's validating a particular pattern. So in this case, it can be either capital or lowercase letters, and the animal's name could contain numbers. But then if you were to look, I've also got enumerated lists for things like sex and for things like color. So the user can't just inject anything they want. It has to meet one of these criteria or it will be rejected. Now, if we wanted to actually see that in practice here, let's go ahead and add a new animal to the database. I'm just going to go ahead and type in anything here. Again, some of these things are required while others are not. Let's go ahead and throw in a few things in here. And then once it's submitted, you will see that I automatically got redirected to the animals page. And if we scroll down, we should see that new animal has been added to the table right down here below. Moving on to my final functional page within the app, this is going to be the pairings page. And you can see right now it just shows a list of potential pairings. and then right now a random name generator, which if this little get name is suggested, it makes a request to the random name generator API, one of those free APIs that we can use, returns a list of names, and then in my case, I'm just populating that name in this little div element right here. Now, this API did allow me to filter by certain things, so I could actually pass query parameters to narrow down to only male names or only female names, or to names in a particular geography. But if we were to take a look at my code or my endpoint, you can see that in my case, I've essentially hard-coded the quantity to 3. For whatever reason, I just wanted to receive 3 names and then display them in a list, and eventually I decided just to use one of those names. But right here, you can see my API endpoint for /API/random. And if we were to pull up my actual root index file and take a look at the request to that endpoint, you can see right here, if the state view matches pairings, I'm going to attach an event listener to that random name button right here. Again, looking for a user to click on that button. And if they do, it's going to handle this GET request to my, again, located on the render server, my endpoint right here, to the API/random endpoint. It's going to take that data, and actually, first off, it's going to clear out whatever I had in there. So it's going to first clear out whatever data I already have, and then essentially replace it with the first element in the array that I received from that third-party API. Now, you can see as soon as it does that, once it's done taking that data and storing it, it's going to re-render the page. So again, as soon as I hit that get name button, this right here is refreshing, and we now see the new name generated right here in this div element. Now, this right here, everything I just showed you was essentially everything I built as a MVP or minimum viable product for our Capstone. But I did end up going a little bit further. And after finishing this, I realized that although a NoSQL database is incredibly fast and easy to use, especially in terms of storing data, it really wasn't going to be ideal for the type of application that I wanted to build. So I needed much more structured data for tracking animals' lineage. So I ended up refactoring a lot of my code to a SQL backend. And since I was already refactoring to a different database architecture, I also decided to learn React to work on the front end as well. Now, in the end, I created an entirely new application with a lot more helpful features. And if you take a look at this one, again, this one is made entirely with React, and I did use a Chakra UI as kind of a styling structure for everything I wanted to build, which made everything a lot quicker to do and definitely helped with what I was trying to create. But right here, you can see I've made an entirely new application. On the dashboard page, it breaks down what the animals currently held in the database are. So in this database, we've got 6 male African pygmy hedgehogs, 3 females, and then the male to female ratio is 2.0. So twice as many males as females. You can also see I've got no current pairings, but I could actually add new pairings just by clicking on that little menu. I could search for the breed. I could search for the parents that I wanted to add. If I were to actually throw one in here, just as an example, and you're going to see that that information does get added, as well as the ability to remove certain things just by hitting the little X over here on the right, and again, deleting that from my database. I also have a animals list down here below, again, just showing all of the animals in the database, as well as little add parent and add color components where a user could simply click on this to add the parent's father in this example, or the mother, or the eye color. I mean, whatever it was that you wanted to add, you could simply look through this list and then add it to the table, and in this case, also to the database. Now, I also created the animals table, which we just saw, but this is more of a hyper-focused look at it. It also offers the ability to sort by a particular column, whether that be name or sex or species or whatever you wanted to sort these columns by. We also have a filter by breed input up here in the upper right, where I could say I just want to look at a particular breed of animal, in this case, greater hedgehog tenrex. I could delete that filter. I could add a new animal to my database by clicking this add animal form and again, go through all of the inputs to add it. And then finally, the last thing that I worked on in here that I am particularly proud of is the pet profile page. Now, currently, it's got the animal Filippo pulled up, giving you some basic information about it. But in this guy's case, it doesn't seem like I've added much to him. So if we were to look up a different animal, we can use this search box in the upper left now to get a list of the animals that we have in our database. And in this case, if I select Fabrizio, we can see a list of Fabrizio's information, along with, most importantly, the actual pedigree for this animal. So we can see his parents right here, the father, the mother, and then we can see that animal's father and mother, or in the situations where there is no data, we could add that animal's parent, as well as we could click on one of these guys, and it'll automatically pull up that animal's information. But that's all I've had the chance to make for my separate React app, and I do plan on continuing the development of this one, adding the pairings table, an import tool to add a table's worth of animals all at once, and features to share certain animals to other users. It is definitely still a work in progress, but everything that you saw here was a culmination of everything I learned over here at Savvy Coders, and just the knowledge that I can essentially find the answer to any question with the right amount of Googling. But thank you again for watching and for taking the time to see what I built. Thank you.